First of all, it's really delightful to be here with you today. And, when I first retired, which it's hard to believe, but it's been almost 8 years ago, I was often asked, well, what are you doing nowadays? So I'll give you a little summary of what my activities are in a particular day. I get up early, as has been my custom for many years. I have to get up early to keep up with this fantastic human spaceflight team. And but today my itinerary is different. I get up early, get a cup of coffee, and read the paper. And by the time I finish reading the paper, it's time to have breakfast, about 8 o'clock in the morning. Have another cup of coffee and have breakfast, and then it's time for a little nap. Never did that one. I wasn't always asleep, by the way, although on occasion it worked out to be very nice. But after the nap, I'd wake up, have another cup of coffee, and read the paper again. By that time, I'd forgotten what I read the first time. Now, I told that to a group of hospital administrators at Fort Worth one day, and a fellow came up after the meeting and said, "Don't worry, Tommy, it won't be long till you can hide your own Easter eggs." And I have to tell you that I told that story to a group of Rotarians in a little community down near Clear Lake who were made up mostly of elderly people. Now, elderly people is anyone that's 10 years older than you are. Doesn't much matter how old you are, by the way. And I didn't get a single chuckle from those guys. Today, there are 6 people living and working on board an amazing spacecraft. Amazing not in just what it is, but how it was put together and how it came together from 16 different countries, 37 states in the United States, and how it was physically put together by human beings in a 5 psi suit in 143 spacewalks. The station was assembled and put together by human beings with hands, and 5 psi gloves was hard work. EVAs has not always been easy, but they sure look easy today. And tomorrow evening, I believe it's tomorrow evening, the International Space Station program will receive the Collier Award. I was invited to come to that, but I chose to come and be here with you today. And I would suggest to you that team of people, along with the shuttle team, deserves that trophy. So today I want to talk a little bit about 3 things. A summary of what the ISS is about. I really think even those of us who work in the program and are close to the program really do not appreciate the amazing spacecraft that circles the Earth every 90 minutes. And secondly, a few lessons learned along the way. And last, if you don't show me that 5-minute thing too quickly, 4 pillars of success. The 4 things that contribute to the success of this fabulous group of people from all over the world that make this amazing spacecraft possible. The ISS is an enormous vehicle. The Apollo stack, when it left Earth orbit, weighed 150,000 pounds, and a great deal of that was propellant. This space station now weighs over 750,000 pounds, and when completed will be almost 1 million pounds. That in itself is not, perhaps, although it's the biggest thing in orbit to date, is not in of itself what's amazing. What's amazing is how it got put together. It got put together one piece at a time. The biggest piece I believe, was about 33,000 pounds that got launched on a Proton out of Baikonur. And the shuttle delivered pieces in the order of 25, 30,000 pounds at a whack, and they all got put together by these human beings working with these hands and 5 PSI gloves, which is an incredible event. And I'll talk about the EVAs a little bit later on. There's been a number of launches to the station. The Russians have launched 4 modules, 3 on Protons and 1 on a Soyuz rocket. And some of their capability has been launched in the shuttle. The shuttle has gone to the station 34 times and delivered these packages and logistics and so on and so forth. ESA has launched 1 ATV, a magnificent vehicle. I walked in it my last year in an engineering model, my last year before I retired, and you can walk into their vehicle and look up at the ceiling. You can't reach the ceiling of the ATV when you walk in it with your hands. So it's a huge vehicle. It can carry almost 15,000 pounds depending upon the mix of what you take. The Japanese has a similar vehicle called an HTV that can deliver equivalent kinds of material, and it's very unique, and it can also carry external payloads. No other way to get big stuff up to the station except for the HTV in today's capabilities. So it's really an amazing set of launches over the last what amounts to 12 years. EVAs have not always been easy. And during Gemini, we went through a whole learning process of how to do spacewalks. They're difficult. You have to be tied down, or when you rotate this way, your body goes this way. You all had physics understand that. And you're in this suit with 5 PSI suits, and you have difficult moving your arms and your hands and your fingers, although the gloves are much better than they were in the early days. We learned how to do spacewalks in Gemini, but we had to learn again in Shuttle. Somehow or another we had forgotten about what it takes to train an astronaut in what amounts to a big swimming pool in Houston, and how not to cheat. You got to learn how to use the water to simulate zero-G. EVAs have become a thing of they always work. You know, the EVA team is a super organization that does a fantastic job. They're number one. It seems that they always get it right. There's been some 20,000 meals eaten on the space station over the last 10 years. 20,000 meals. And then you can think about clothes and all the other things and the logistics to take care of the vehicle and with LRUs and so on and so forth. Over the life of the station, and the life in my vernacular is 15 years, although it may go longer than that, some 200,000 pounds of propellant will be required to keep the station on orbit, to raise the altitude, because drag brings it down, as you all know. So it's really an amazing accomplishment to make all of this happen. Have there been problems along the way? Of course there have. Columbia was a major problem in terms of delaying the activities. Had to go down to 2 crew persons and do very little activity during that period. The loss of computers on one event where all of the computers stopped working on the station, had to recover the computers, was another big event. Solar array bearing problems. And there's always a problem on the station that needs to be fixed. If you read their activity report, you'll see that they work on something almost every day. But in the end, it gets solved. And they make it look easy, what is really a wonder in space. The International Space Station is something that the human spaceflight teams, both the shuttle and the ISS, indeed should be proud of. It has exceeded my wildest expectations. I expected major problems during this period, and of course Columbia was a major problem with that, but with that exception, things have gone extremely well and continue to operate well. The station today is outfitted and is capable of doing more science, I would think, in a single year than has been done in the last 50 years in human spaceflight. It has 100 racks inside the station to either provide control and operations of the station or provide scientific capability, from furnaces to observation facilities, many different kinds of activities. So it's in a position to be used in a very positive way over the next 10 or 15 years, depending upon what the country decides to do. Some lessons along the way is, number one, I think learning while you're in a low-risk situation is extremely important. Gemini was a learning phase for Apollo in terms of many events like spacewalks, how the operations guys work with the crew, and many others. Shuttle Mir was a learning experience for getting ready to do station. Our world by that time had become driven by shuttle missions 15 days, 10 to 15 days, very oriented to being hurry up and get it done, get 100% or 110%, and so on and so forth. It was indeed a sprint to get the most you can out of this short flight. A station flight is not like that. It's a marathon. You need to pace yourself. You need to operate differently. You need to have a different operating strategy of hold the fort, get the answer, then fix it, rather than have immediate solutions. A completely different strategy. When you go to Mars, and you will someday go to Mars, it may be later than sooner, but you will go to Mars, they need another operating strategy. When the crew is 30 minutes away in terms of talking to them, you have to think about doing things differently than you have in the past. But so operating a low risk, and I happen to believe that lunar operations would have been a wonderful opportunity to learn how to work 30 minutes away before you're committed to being 30 minutes away. So I have a little different opinion than the current administrations. Also, besides learning as we go, we also learned a great deal about how to work with the international partners, and in this case, working with the Russians. I was in the formulation phase for getting ready to do the Shuttle Mir program and led that activity that later became the director of the Shuttle Mir program, and had the opportunity to work with the Russians a great deal. 29 trips later to Moscow, I've decided I don't want to go back again simply because I don't like to travel. But one of the things we learned is how important, and of course you all know this, how important understanding the culture of our partners and indeed of the various disciplines within NASA is very important. The culture. The Russian culture, quite frankly, drove me crazy. And by the way, there's no correct culture in this world. It's just different cultures. The Russian culture is perfectly okay. I'm sure our culture drove them crazy too. So it's not who is right, it's understanding their culture and appreciating it rather than worrying about it all the time. They do such things as you'd have an appointment to talk on the telephone at 8 o'clock tomorrow, and you dial them up at 8 o'clock, and oh, by the way, he's gone to do something else. Their culture is that if there's something more important, that's fine, go do it. or if you're in the middle of a meeting and something comes up that might be more important, that's okay, bug out and go do it. Things like that just we would not do in the Midwestern United States. They found it okay. Another aspect of their culture is if the boss decided it, it's now his problem. I would hope each of you who are in this business were in a situation where the boss did something stupid, you would come and have a little chit-chat with him. In the Russian culture, that doesn't happen. So that drives you to think about how you operate with the Russians. Don't start with the boss. Start with the guy that really knows, the lowest level in the system. And by the way, I'm not going to talk about my friends from ESA and Japan. We learned a lot with ESA through the Space Lab experience and how to operate with them, and our culture was much closer to ours in terms of the technical aspects than in the Russian. Also in the Shuttle Mir program, the Russians wasn't too happy about having to do this thing. I remember my counterpart was a former cosmonaut, a crusty fellow with quite a reputation named Valery Rumin, and he and I were sitting in a meeting in a little room adjacent to a place where we were finishing the minutes for a 2-week-long meeting and talking, and he got to reminiscing, and he said, "You know, Tommy," he called me Tommy, he said, "Tommy, I don't like this program. It's not good for my country, it's not good for my space agency, and it's not good for me. I just don't like it." And I said, "Well, Valery, that's okay, but you and I have got to make it happen." And Valeria said, "Well, I'll tell you what, Tommy." I said, "When people come to my home and said, sometimes I spread out everything I have on the table and share everything I have. And sometimes I just put out a little bit." And I knew that I was on the little bit end of the table. Came to pass that a lot of things happened in transition. They launched an element to the station. The Russians launched the element to the Mir, and the solar panel didn't deploy. And we were launching the shuttle to the Mir, and they brought up a device that they were going to use to cut the solar panel loose to Houston to fly on the shuttle. In the meantime, the CVA team of ours had gone out to one of the hardware stores and found a device and modified it and put it on board the shuttle. Make a long story short, the cosmonauts used the NASA device that had been made. And we went through those periods of things where I thought of the Shuttle Mir program in terms of what was best for the Shuttle Mir program. Not what was best for NASA, but what was best for the Shuttle Mir program. And I'd always been told the way to get along with the Russians was to have a good relationship with. So I tried to do that in terms, also had Valery and his team over to my house and had dinner and fed him salmon from Alaska that my son and I had caught, and so on. But I never felt like I got an inch out of Mr. Rumin because of those relationships. He always did what he thought was best for him and his space program. So I never quite understood that. And then 2 or 3 years later, when I was a shuttle program manager, and Bill Reedy was working for me at the time, and Bill said, I ran into Valery and his wife was a cosmonaut also, and down in Florida, and he asked me what was I doing nowadays, and they said, well, I'm working for Tommy Holloway. Bill was in charge of upgrades program of the shuttle at the time, and I'm doing so and so. And Valery said, well, Bill, you're a lucky guy. So I never knew that Valery had the respect and appreciated the things that we were doing for him. during that time until Bill told me that story. The message of that is always do good things for other people, even if you don't get the direct payback, and even if there's not a payback in view of what you might be doing. Always do positive and direct things for other people in life as you engage with them. So Valery was an interesting guy. I have one story to tell that has nothing to do with lessons learned, but it's just something I couldn't pass up. Frank Culberson and I and 3 or 4 other guys attended what amounts to the Russian FRR, and I'm told the first time Westerners participated in their equivalent to an FRR. I don't have time to talk to you about what their FRR looked like at that time, but I will tell you this to tell the story. Their people get up and they say, I don't have any problems, or I have this problem, and then they sit down. And it's a very short kind of thing. And at that particular time, the Russians were economically in a very bad shape. And so the story goes something like this. The first guy that got up said, I don't have any problems except hadn't been paid in 5 months. And if I don't get paid pretty soon, the world's going to stop. The third guy gets up and basically says the same thing. And by the way, I skipped something. Up in the front at the table was Mr. Semyonov, who was running the meeting, the head of Energia. On his right was Mr. Koptev, the chief of Russian agency, and on his left was a government official whose name I've forgotten, and on his far left was a general from Baikonur. So they were up on the stage and sitting behind the table. Mr. Semyonov had already advised them not to talk about money. He knew some of them had not been paid, but we're not here to talk about money. So about the 4th guy that got up and said, I haven't been paid, the world's going to stop, Mr. Semyonov pounded the table and said, I'll tell you guys something, I want you to shut up. You all wanted this democracy, now you got it, sit down and shut up. Anyway, he was really pining for the good old days of communism where he had all the resources he needed to do what he needed to do. Anyway, that was an interesting day. I'd like to now switch very quickly. Well, let me say this first. A few people predicted this station would not work out. There was an EVA study done before we started that said too many EVAs, too complex, we just can't make this thing work. Turned out they did, and a tribute to the EVA team. Tom Young told me in one of the independent review activities that we had inadequate systems engineering activity and we needed a better systems engineering team. And if Tom was here, I would tell him, Tom, you're wrong. As my mother used to say, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in how well this vehicle has come together from 16 countries, 37 states, and it works. Works incredibly well, where it's been wired together, cooling lines have been put together, electrical systems have been wired together between all these modules, data systems have been put together between all these systems, 42 computers, 100 data networks, 400,000 measurements that get downlinked, and so on and so forth. So it's systems engineering got done somehow or another, even though Mr. Young was not able to see how it worked out, how it was going to work out. I'd like to talk about 4 pillars that made all of this, that contributed to all of this. 4 things that I think are important when we endeavor on something this complex. The station is a highly interactive, complex system managed and operated by a distributed group of people. And what I mean by that, U.S. does built and did part of it, Russian built and operates part of it. ESA operates their laboratory, the Japanese operates their laboratory, so it's a distributed operations system as well as a distributed development capability. And I will tell you, the experts say that that's a recipe for disaster, a recipe for catastrophic events. But yet, it has come together and operated extremely well. 4 pillars that I think makes that possible is, number 1, have the right attitude. Number 2, technical excellence. Number 3, character and integrity. And number 4, remember you're not as smart as you think you are. Any of you watched You're Not as Smart as a Fifth Grader? Anyway, when I was a young fellow, I thought the technical excellent part one was number 1. The technical gurus of the community were the people who made the world go round. As I have grown older and hopefully wiser, I have really come to appreciate that having the right attitude is the number 1 thing. When you have people with the right attitude, you really can do marvelous things. And by that I mean a spectrum of people who are inspired, motivated, and dedicated. Thomas Jefferson, who probably gets credit for saying far more things than he really said, said nothing can stop the man with the right attitude, and today we would say, and woman, nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong attitude. People with the right attitude are eager. They want to get the job done. They're focused on the work and not satisfying what they think the boss might want done. They are invested in the mission. They want to get the mission done. They're cooperative with their team members. They're cooperative with the management. My friend General Bolden is going through a difficult time, but he works for a boss called the President of the United States. So understand the position that he's in. He perhaps has the right attitude. It's a positive thing. Gene Kranz is reported to have said, failure is not an option. And he certainly said it in the movie. I would tell you that, unfortunately, failure is an option. It happens regularly. But what is not an option is have the attitude that failure is an option. Always have the attitude, I can fix it. I can fix it. Churchill was reported to have said to a group of graduating military officers 3 words 3 times. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Never give up that you can solve these impossible problems, because the impossible can happen. Impossible problems can be solved. Always have the right attitude and be cooperative in those things. I had a fellow that worked on maps on the lunar program. We launched the maps so the astronauts take pictures of the lunar surface. And it got updated every flight based on the latest set of data from the U.S., believe it or not, U.S. Mapping Agency put this all together. Had a guy always had a problem with the mapping agency, always had a problem. Always come to me with a big long, said, what in the world can I do about it? And one day, he was a military officer. He went back to, I think it was the Air Force. And another GS-11 took his place. This was a major, by the way. And GS-11 took his place. I never heard about the maps again. They just got done. I suggest to you the second guy had the right attitude. He just went off and solved the problem, didn't complain about it. 1 or 2 pessimistic people can ruin the whole barrel. And to be blunt, it gets to the point when you have these pessimistic people in your organization is you need to find someplace else for them to work. Because they can destroy your organization, or at least the productivity of your organization. One last thing on having a right attitude. In 1954, Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile. Experts had predicted it would never be done. He ran a 4-minute mile. That in itself is not amazing. The amazing things are that in the next year, 27 people ran a 4-minute mile. In the year after that, 300 people ran a 4-minute mile. And on one race, 13 out of 13 ran a 4-minute mile. Now, what in the world changed? The only thing changed is people became convinced that they could do it. And they'd pay the price that it took to enable them to do it. And they pay the price. I have a 14-year-old daughter who runs, she's a freshman, that runs at the state level in Texas and track. And she pays the price because she practices. When she came in third in cross country last year, when she was in the 8th grade, she went home and said, "Dad, I'm going to run tomorrow. And you know, I don't remember her name, but so-and-so came in first. I bet she's not running." She will win the state tournament before she graduates from high school. The second thing is technical excellence, which is really the foundation of what we did. Will Rogers said that we learn by books, we learn by observing others, and some people just have to pee on an electric fence. But learning is, technical excellence is more than graduating from college with a degree, a master's degree or a PhD, and have all of the book knowledge you can. And technical excellence is a lifetime pursuit that goes on every day of your career in terms of learning. A continual process of learning those things that are that you need to know. You need to have a curious mind of why is that true? Why is it that way? And I could tell you stories about that, but he's going to put up the 5-minute sign here in a minute. You never graduate in this business of technical excellence. In fact, I would suggest to you, if you ever think you have arrived in the world of technical excellence, it's time for you to change your discipline and go do something different. A couple of stories. Neil Armstrong, you all know about Neil Armstrong, but some of the things you might not know about Neil is, of course, he was a fighter pilot. He flew the X-15. He also was a commander on Gemini 8. A flight, Wayne, by the way, I was an activities officer on that flight. And rendezvoused and docked with a Gemini rocket, a Gina rocket. And shortly after the docking, a thruster on what amounts to the service module of the Gemini spacecraft stuck on. The vehicle started spinning up, and the crew thought it was this Agena that they had just docked with was a problem. They undocked and it spun up faster. Eventually, Armstrong armed the re-entry attitude control system, which was a reaction control system on the nose of the Gemini, and used it to damp the rates. In the meantime, they had managed to turn off the thrusters in the service module, which is an independent thrust. Make a long story short, The Gemini spacecraft was rotating when they saw damping all started at 270 degrees a second. Neil Armstrong damped those rates, used 2/3 of the entry propellant to do that. Dave Scott told me after the mission, he said, if I'd have been in the left seat, we'd still be rotating. Neil was ready for the day when he needed to save the day. He had paid the price along the way with all the activities that had led up to that event. And in our careers, the same thing happens. We're in a continual process of being prepared for the day when we will be called upon to do our thing, so to speak, and to save the day or to contribute to saving the day. So always pursue technical excellence. I could tell some other stories about that, but the 5-minute sign just came up. The third thing is character and integrity. Why is that important? First of all, when you as a leader or participant in a system have character and integrity, people will listen and follow and be a better team member because they appreciate and they know you are doing what you believe is the right thing rather than what might be some subtle motivation because the boss wants it or so on and so forth. Character is what you are when you take off all the masks that you wear. Stop pretending, and it's what you really are as a human being. Integrity is consistency between how you behave when you're being watched and when you're not being watched. It's consistency in how you behave as a human being. This is all based on bedrock principles rather than emotions. It's the bedrock principle that are the guiding lights of your behavior as a human being. It's the thing that enables you to always be consistent in how you behave and how you operate. Now, I have to say that this is not a goody two-shoe thing of you're always trying to please people. Again, Jefferson reportedly said you can't please all the people all the time. And I've added to that, you shouldn't even try to please all the people all the time because there's some people out there that what they want you to do is not the right thing. So don't be misled by this business of always trying to please all the people all the time. You know, I think, and I'm biased because he worked for me off and on for 25 years, but I think you have an exemplary example among you in the human spaceflight in terms of a guy you call Gerst. I know him as Bill Gerstenmaier. But he's an outstanding example of a person of integrity that's always doing what he thinks is right for the human spaceflight program. He's a big hero of mine. He's a guy who made it easy for me to perhaps a little late, walk away from the International Space Station. He's the guy that followed me on the International Space Station, a guy I have a great deal of admiration for. The last principle is you're not as smart as you think you are. You need to stay focused. You know, success as people, technical people and managers, success breeds a thing called I know and I understand and I can make decisions based on my background, my guts, so to speak, and my understanding of the problem. When we get to that point, we have passed the point of being where we ought to be. We need to insist that we have the data. We need to insist that the experience that we're operating on is applicable to the problem that we're solving today. Critical decisions require discipline and thoroughness, no matter what the background and experience is that we have behind us. The technical wing of the human spaceflight program has where the sustaining engineering people come together, provide technical support to the shuttle flight operations team, has a slogan. It says, "In God we trust, all others bring data." That's a good slogan for you as technical managers and as managers of projects and programs to remember. Make sure that the decisions you're making from the gut, if you will, that the data that you're using is really applicable. In all other cases, particularly in critical and decisions, that you have the data to make the decision. Now, the flip side of that, at least I go too fast, is that you carry that to the extreme and you never get to fly. So, you have to balance that and be very careful in the balancing of making decisions versus making sure that you spend enough time to have the adequate data and so on and so forth. We talked about expectations yesterday and setting reasonable expectations. My emotions say I would sure like for all of you to leave today and remember the 4 principles 6 months from now. But a reasonable expectations is that if 50% of you remember one of these, I would be most delighted. And thank you very much.